He had always believed that love was something you protected by holding it tightly, the way you hold a fragile glass with both hands, careful not to let it slip. Arav grew up learning that life rewarded planning, discipline, and control. His father had worked 2 jobs to keep the family steady, his mother had measured every expense, and love in their home was quiet and practical, expressed through responsibility more than words. Arav carried that lesson into adulthood, into his career, and eventually into his relationship, never realizing how heavy control could feel to the person standing beside him. Mira entered his life like a soft breeze that did not announce itself, but changed the temperature of the room all the same. She worked at the community library, a place where silence was respected but emotions lived freely between pages. Mira had a gentle way of listening, not just to words but to pauses, to the sighs people didn't notice they were releasing. When Arav first spoke to her, fumbling over a question about a book he didn't truly need, she smiled in a way that felt like permission to be human. That smile stayed with him long after he left the library, echoing through his carefully scheduled days. Their relationship unfolded slowly, built on conversations about dreams they were almost afraid to say out loud. Arav spoke about security, about building a life that would never fall apart the way he had seen others fall. Mira spoke about meaning, about wanting to wake up each day feeling connected to the people she loved. They found comfort in each other's differences, believing that balance came from meeting in the middle. Arav admired Mira's patience and warmth, and Mira admired Arav's dedication and sense of responsibility. Love grew quietly, without grand gestures, rooted in mutual respect and the shared belief that commitment mattered. As time passed, Arav's need to protect began to show itself in small ways. He planned their weekends, managed their finances, and gently but firmly guided decisions, believing he was being supportive. Mira noticed, but she did not protest at first. She told herself that love required patience, that Arav's intentions were kind, that control was simply his language of care. Yet, over time, she felt herself shrinking, her opinions softened before they could fully form, her dreams adjusted to fit within Arav's careful plans. She loved him deeply, but she also felt a quiet ache she couldn't name. Life tested them when Mira was offered a chance to lead a literacy program in a neighboring town, a role that would bring her closer to the communities she cared about. The opportunity thrilled her, but it also frightened her, not because of the work, but because she already knew Arav's response. When she shared the news, his face tightened with concern, and he spoke of stability, of long commutes, of risks that did not need to be taken. He said he worried about her, about their future, about whether such changes were necessary. Mira listened, nodding, feeling the familiar weight settle in her chest. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when love had begun to feel like a careful negotiation instead of a shared journey. She thought about all the times she had adjusted herself to keep peace, all the times she had chosen silence over honesty. Mira believed in sacrifice, but she also believed that love should not require the loss of one's voice. By morning, she knew she had to speak, even if her voice trembled. Their conversation was not loud or dramatic. It was filled with pauses, with tears that surprised them both. Mira spoke about feeling unseen, about wanting to grow without fear of disappointing the person she loved most. Arav listened, truly listened, for the first time without planning his response. Her words did not accuse him, but they held a mirror he had never looked into before. He realized that in trying to protect their life, he had been shaping it alone, leaving little space for Mira's dreams to breathe. The weeks that followed were heavy with reflection. Arav questioned beliefs he had never challenged, asking himself why control felt safer than trust. He remembered his parents' quiet endurance, mistaking it for happiness, and understood that love expressed only through responsibility could still leave hearts lonely. Mira gave him space, not as punishment, but as an act of faith, believing that real change required understanding, not pressure. Distance taught them both the value of presence. One evening, Arav visited the library where their story had begun. He watched Mira from a distance as she helped a child sound out words, her patience endless, her smile unchanged. In that moment, He saw her not as someone to protect, but as someone strong, capable, and deserving of freedom. He realized that love was not about holding tightly, but about standing close enough to catch someone if they fell, without keeping them from walking. When Arav spoke again, his words were simpler than before. He apologized, not with excuses, but with honesty. He told Mira that he was afraid, that control had been his shield against loss, but that he was learning to trust love instead of manage it. He told her that her dreams mattered, that her growth did not threaten their relationship, but could enrich it. Mira listened, her eyes filled with cautious hope, understanding that change was a process, not a promise fulfilled overnight. Mira accepted the opportunity, and the months that followed were not easy. Schedules shifted, routines changed, and uncertainty visited often. Yet, something new lived between them now, a respect deeper than comfort. Arav learned to ask instead of decide, to listen without correcting, to support without steering. Mira learned that patience did not mean silence, and that love could grow stronger when honesty replaced fear. They faced misunderstandings, moments when old habits tried to return, but they met them with conversations instead of walls. Love became less about perfection and more about effort, less about control and more about choice. Arav found joy in Myra's stories from her work, pride in her confidence, and peace in knowing that her happiness was not something he had to manage, only honor. Years later, when they looked back, the moment Arav let go of control stood out as the turning point, not because everything became easy, but because everything became real. They understood that love was not proven by how tightly you hold on, but by how bravely you allow someone to be themselves beside you. Their story became one of quiet strength, built on patience, respect, and the courage to grow together. The moral of their journey lingered in the smallest moments, in shared cups of tea, in conversations held without fear, in dreams encouraged rather than contained. Love, they learned, is not about shaping someone into your idea of safety, but about trusting them enough to walk their own path, knowing that true partnership is found not in control, but in compassion.